Hey, cutie pies, it is Lanikia, and I am coming to you today with another episode of the Endgame Season 1, Episode 5 Gold Rush. Don't forget to, if you're looking to work from home, to look at my work from home videos. Um, but getting into this episode, a scale of 1 to 10, it was probably an 8 for me. I love episodes with bombs and all that kind of stuff. Plus, this show is so good because it's so suspenseful that I really enjoy it. Okay, so we get into the episode. So they take us to 2018, and we see Elena is cleaning tools, and he was like, "Oh, so domestic." Sergey tells her that, and we see his blood and stuff on there. So then we see a man that they have been torturing, and we realize that they are torturing him because he planted the bomb in the church that caused the massacre that killed their family, all of Sergey's family, and everything. So they're torturing him because they're trying to figure out who did this. And so she tells him, "I'm not going to kill you. I mean, tell me who did it." He said, "You're just going to kill me if I tell you." She said, "I'm not going to kill you." Elena tells the man that, "I'm not going to kill you. Just whisper to me who did it." And so he whispers to her who did it. And he tells her he regrets doing it, that he was forced to do it because his wife was sick and he needed so much money, and they promised him all this money, but it ended up being for nothing because his wife died anyways. And so he's very sad, about that, and he's remorseful for what he's done. And so then we see that she tells him, "No, I promise you I wouldn't kill you, so I'm not." But he didn't, and so Sergey ends up killing him. Then we move to seeing Elena with Val, and so they're talking, and Val is just trying to get her to tell her who is the next person on the hit list. And Elena is just like, "I'm not gonna tell you that." She's not gonna tell Val that information. Girl, you knew she wasn't gonna tell you that. But she says, I cross reference everything, and the people who are watching on this photo, they're watching the actual footage of the bomb attack. And she said and Elena said the massacre of women, children, and everything. And so, excuse me. So, then they get to talking, and Val is just like, how can you justify, like, don't haven't you taken enough revenge for those people or facing charges? Isn't that enough? And she says, "What would you do if you could talk to Bigsby and everything?" And Elena was like, "He's dead, so I'm not gonna go off hypothetical and everything." Um, So then we go to the Bank 6 Federal Reserve, and they pick up the man and the woman who can actually open the vault, because the Federal Reserve has several layers of security, and some of those you actually have to have people, and there's 4 people who can actually open up the vault. But at times you have to have multiple people to do it. So they have 2 people already in them, so they pick them up, and they're going to start going through for the Federal Reserve to get inside the vault. Sorry, I lost my place on my phone. So then we see okay, so then the chief um the chief calls in, and they're talking on the phone, and Doke is trying to sugarcoat everything. The reserve has this many things, and she was like, don't they have people to get through that? And she was like, "Stop sugarcoating, like, I need facts." And so Val was just real with her, as far as letting her know, we yes, they can get through. They can possibly get through to the vault because there's 6,000 ton of gold in there, and they're like, and the chief said we cannot have that type of gold messed up, or even a threat that they can actually get to it, because um that would crash the market. It would, it would make them, as well as make them look weak to, anyone else in the world, that they can't even protect, this money and everything, the Federal Reserve. And so, she so the secretary, she does, or the chief does, compliment Val and Flowers, who's Anthony, on just, what a great job they're doing. And of course Doke is just like, oh, because once again he's been overlooked, but he's being overlooked because he's like the kiss up boy, and just wants to all he thinks about is, making himself look good so he can move up the ranks and everything. So then they say, well, if they're going into the Federal Reserve, how can we stop them? And that's when Val says there's a guy who built. They start naming off these people in the photo, and the chief recognized Abdel. And she says, they start naming off his companies, and they say, well, that company, I think it was TINT, is actually a company, that they use for the Federal Reserve. So if somebody can open up the reserve to try to stop them, it would be him. So they send Val to go and check on to go get him. Um, so then So then we see that a woman is talking to the director, and they're telling him, okay, so she's receiving messages from, the people at the Federal Reserve, but she's also receiving messages for the prison, and they're like, the only person in the prison that she could be receiving messages from is Owen, because remember, they don't know Sergey is alive. So then the director calls, um, Anthony, and he tells him, calls Doke. Doke answers, and he said, I need to speak to Anthony. And he tells Anthony, don't tell anyone, not Doke, not Val. This is a secret mission you're on. I need you to go to the prison, and I'll tell you why later on. So then Anthony tells Doke, I have to go. And he was like, what? Where you going? He was like, I can't say, or whatever. So this makes Doke even more upset, because he's like, oh my gosh, more, you know, I'm being just passed over. Like, I'm not needed. He's not doing his job well, and when it came to this crisis, it shows. Um, so he just looks bad. He just looks bad. So then we see that so then Val goes to speak to Abdel, and at first he didn't want to let her in, but then she told him, I'm with the United White House and all that, so he went ahead and let her in. And he says, of course she was like, you knew I was coming. He was like, of course I knew you were coming. I said, what's happening on the news? He was like, I've never even heard of Elena. And he says, the bombing that happened, that wasn't even me. Like, they brought me in the day of, or maybe the day before, and they didn't tell him what was going on, so he had no clue what they were doing and everything. He said, I did the drone. He said, but I didn't know what they were doing until it actually happened and everything. So he was sick about it. Um, and so then there, he has his phone, because he's really techie. So he has his phone set up, and they realize that three men have come for him at his place. And he says, I have a safe room at my home. So Val is like, go to your safe room. I'll take care of this. And she calls her director, and she's like, hey, these men have come to get Abdel from the home. It's three men, and and the director is like, I'm going to send backup immediately. So then he goes into Elena, and he's like, call your men off or whatever, because they have on Snow White's mask like Elena's men wear. And she's like, call your men off. They're going after Val. And she was like, I would never hurt Val. And so he doesn't believe it or whatever. But anyways, Val takes care of herself. The men weren't that great, anyways. But she shoots two of them, and the third one, she goes to Abdel, and she's like, "Why are you not in the safe room?" He said, "Cause it's not working." But anyways, they end up capturing the third one. And so she comes out, she's there, the police are there, and she tells the backup, and she tells the director that, what did Elena say? And he said, she said she had nothing to do with this. She wasn't involved in this at all. And so he says, so that while this is going on at the Federal Reserve, they are breaching the vaults. They have the handprints. Like, on one level you had to have three handprints. Well, they only had two people, but it didn't matter, because another woman that could open up the reserve, she had ordered a glass, something to drink, and they took her glass, and they molded her handprint into like this silicone, so they were able to get through that level. And then there was another level that was voice recognition, and they used this director who wanted his name pronounced correctly. They purposely mispronounced it. He wanted it pronounced correctly, and so they used him to get to another level. So all the along the ways they're getting past this vault, and so they tell they tell her they only have one more level left. So Elena and Dolk talk, and he says, "I'm going to stay with Abdul and help him get in so that he can like go into the vault so that we could try to stop them." And she says, "I'm going to go around the other way where they are to try to get them that way." So there was two ways they were going to try to go in. And so as they're doing this, um, Elena is going in, and she's like, "Okay, they've reached the last level, and I there's a explosive or whatever." Actually, excuse me, it was Dolk who said that, because he and Dale go in and they find the different levels, and he was like, "Okay, this is like the trapdoor way to go in." So they break it down or whatever, and they get into the main building. And he says, "How long is it going to take before we override?" He said, "Just a few minutes, and we'll be overriding." So he overrides the level or whatever. But before he does that, Elena is like, "Oh, they have a bomb, so they're gonna blow their way into the last level to get into the to get into the Federal Reserve with the money." And the whole time she's like, "This doesn't feel like, something feels off about this." So she calls the director, and he's like, "Elena is cool as a cucumber." Um, she says the director tells her Elena is cool as a cucumber. And she's like, "I don't know, just something feels off." Now, while this is going on, Anthony has went and talked to Owen, and he tells Owen that they try to attack Val. He doesn't get anything from Owen except for telling him, because Owen can't say what's really going on. But Owen does go to Sergey, and he says, they shot at Val while they were getting Abdel and everything. And he was like, Elena's taking care of her. And he was like, Owen tells Sergey, Elena better, because if anything happens to Val, I'm gonna get both you and Elena, and that's a promise or whatever. So there's that. So going back to the Federal Reserve, we see that Dope tries to contact Elena, but the system is, staticky. And then when Elena tries to contact Dope to let him know that, hey, they've reached the last layer, as well, to tell him that they're both trying to tell each other, we know they reached the last layer and they can't. And she was like, the system is staticky. And then she remembers on Abdel's phone that it had a scrambler. And she was like, "Oh my gosh, they've turned Abdel, and we just walked him into the Federal Reserve, but there's nothing they can do." So then they go to where Doke is, and Abdel is like, "Oh, I almost got it." He was like, "You can do anything from your phone." And so he creates like this mask on his phone, but I guess it's letting them take control. But it has Elena's, Snow White's mask, which is Elena's mask. And then he unscrambles like the communication, but by that time it's too late, because Elena, Val is talking to Doke, and she says, "Get Adele out of there, he's working with Snow White, he's working with Elena." And Abdel's like, "Yeah, it's too late now." So they've opened up the Federal Reserve. They've breached the last layer, and they get all of them out of there, and they set the bomb. The one guy's like, "I'll take care of this. Y'all all go," and he sets the bomb. And so they tell Abdel, why are you doing this? And then we go back and we see that Abdel really was bothered by how they tricked him into massacre, creating something that would kill all these people. And he was involved in it and didn't know. And so he became an alcoholic. And Elena found him, but right before she found him, because she was going on revenge just to kill everybody in the photo. But right before, as she found him, she found out she was pregnant. And that made her want to not destroy life, but just fix the world or whatever. And so that's how she was able to flip him to her side, because she forgave him, for something he didn't know or whatever. So she says, work for me and we'll make things right. So of course that's what he ends up doing. And so they get into the Federal Reserve and everything, right? And the one bomber is in there and he sets the alarm and it's like a minute and 30. And he tells, they were like, if he gets in, if that bomb goes off, it'll vaporize all of the gold, the 6,000 tons of gold, and the month, like, it'd be worthless. And so they get him out of there, and it's just Dope and Val, and they were like, we gotta work as a team. So they take um the bomb, and it was two cords, and they pull the cords at the last seconds. And Doke was like, we got to get out of here. She was like, well, I mean, it don't matter if it didn't work, we're gonna get killed anyway, so what's the point in running? But it worked. So they were able to um stop the bomb and everything. So then they show Val talking again to Abdel. And she was like, wow, what did she do? What did she say to flip you? He was like, you wanting to know because you want to know what she said to your husband. And he just tells her, I had a bigger part in that than I unwillingly, I had a bigger part in that than I wanted and everything. And she protects me. She gave me redemption and she protects me. And she was like, you're about to go to prison. They're like, prison is not, if the Bellocks are looking for you in prison. Oh, I'm sorry, that's one of the reasons she knew as well, because the guy that they captured, he said he didn't know who Elena was. And she was like, so you're not working with Lena? He was like, no. And she was like, what about Belloc? And he lawyered up. And so that's when she was telling her director, there's something fishy about that. And that's how she caught on that Abdul had been turned. But he just tells her, nope, Elena is going to protect me. And she was like, Elena can't protect you in prison. And he was like, she can't be, she can't do all this. And he was like, she knew. She said, no, she told him, I protected you earlier, not Elena. He said, Elena sent you to protect me. And I mean, what can you say? Because like, she did. She knew they were coming for him, so she sent him Val to protect him. Um, so then the director talks to Val, and he tells her about sending Anthony to go and check in on Owen, and how Owen sent a message to Val, to Elena, saying, Val, Abdul, take, they make sure that they're safe or whatever. And so Anthony tries to apologize, and she says there's no need to apologize, but she's like, okay, so now I know Owen is completely working for them. He's been completely flipped. Um, so then they say, the director is like, the chief wants to speak. Well, Dope comes in and he says the chief wants to speak to all of us, victory lap. And Anthony says, take it, Val. But you don't have to worry about Doe, because he made sure he got up in there and he took it. He was like, she was like, the chief was just like, thank you guys so much for, saving the gold and all that. Child, then we go back to the Federal Reserve, and we see that it was a dummy bomb. And like, when he heard them coming, he actually planted the real bomb. But they were so busy looking at the one on the floor that the one that he actually planted is what they left in there. So, and it had like 48 minutes left. So by that time, that goal is probably all gone. And if they would open up the reserve, they would know this, but they probably ain't gonna ever know this until they actually years from now, or I don't know, because you never know with this show. But anyways, what they don't realize is that the Federal Reserve, all that money is gone. Like, they have no money in there, because she's vaporizing. And I'm just like, why did y'all think that would be that easy? Why did you think that man they did all that work to set a bomb, and then you just come in and take it? I mean, come on, y'all. But anyways, um so Val talks to Elena again, and she's just like, telling her about, like, why can't you she just want to know, why can't you let this go and everything. And Val was like, what would you do? Isn't it, she had told Elena earlier, excuse me, Elena had told Val earlier, it's your mother's birthday week. What would you do if you had a chance to speak to Isaac again, the man who killed Val's mother. And she's like, why are you focused on this again? The man is dead. And she told Val, check your pocket. And when Val checks her pocket, she says that's the address where he is located. So now you tell me a story. Now it's your turn to tell me a story to see, like, what would, like, how do you feel? Because Val has wanted revenge for this, but like there was nothing she could do. The man had died or whatever. And so now she knows where he is. She knows he's been alive this whole time. And I guess we're going to find out what she does. But anyways, guys, this was a really good episode. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed this show, period. I don't know how long they can keep going like this, but I enjoy it. But I like the fact now they have been able to encrypt um the messaging that Elena receives. So I want to know how that's going to play out, because Elena always seems to be a few steps ahead of them, like in everything. And so I'm wondering like how all that is going to play out, because she always tells Val, especially at the beginning when Val was like, you're going to get caught, and she was like, yeah, but not yet. So I'm like, she always has a plan, or something, where she won't get found out unless she wants to. Because to me, anytime they get a win, it's because Elena lets them get that win. Like it's nothing that they're doing that's that great that they get the win. But that was the end game, guys. I hope you enjoy the rest of your well, it's midnight. So I hope you are having a peaceful night's sleep, and don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe whenever you get a chance to watch the video. Bye.